But it's a good segue because COVID is not gone. I know we kind of made that joke last week. Like the world is just treating it like it's gone, but it is not gone, and it has infected 2 Texas teams. Zeke being the most famous player that we know of, which he was a little pissed about that it got released to the media. He claimed HIPAA. It's like HIPAA only applies to doctors and medical professions. But kind of scary. And also kind of puts a little bit of a damper of like, maybe we shouldn't get too far ahead of our skis. I know we were saying like football season is going to truck on and all this, but like this thing is still raging with no end in sight.
It really is raging, and the quotes that I heard about it is he's feeling better now, which kind of implies that maybe he wasn't feeling great, which is a little worrisome, especially for someone like Zeke, who is an absolute animal, a physical freak. He's in better shape than 99.9% of the world. But yeah, it's not going anywhere. I know like you said, we kind of made the joke that it's gone because there's just bigger things happening, and maybe that's true, maybe that's not true. But just seeing that it's kind of starting to run rampant in the NFL, and knowing that, say one player gets it, then he's got to do the 14-day quarantine, which means he's missing at least 2 games. It's almost like thinking, well, if this runs rampant through a team, I mean, they could be missing 35% of their team. It's kind of making me a little worried about the season happening. I know we have 2-3 months or whatever it is, but I'm getting a little concerned now, I think.
I agree. I mean, that was always the dilemma because it spreads with people who don't show any symptoms and are asymptomatic, and the fact that it is an airborne through water droplets. These players are always around each other. They're for days on end, especially when you go think about training camp. They're living on top of each other essentially. Like in college, I don't know how you do it because if 45% of the team gets it or potentially has it, like you can't just cancel like Ohio State versus USC. Like you can't fly another team in or pull some dude off waivers. like that's not going to happen in college, and in football and the NFL. It's even worse because it's like I know Bruce Arians was talking. I know one of the things he had suggested is he might be like putting one of his backups basically bubble boy style, like the week before a game, just in case Tom or one of the players gets it and they can't play. Like it's going to be weird unless you wrap them in a bubble, which is essentially what some of those teams are trying to do by bringing people down to the Disney Orlando complex and basically just putting them in a bubble. But even then, I don't know because if you have obviously you're testing before they get in there, but it's tough.
What I've been seeing, I mean, I think they're going to be testing players. I don't know if this is football, but this is at least one league. They're going to be testing players 3 times a week.
Basketball, I think.
And yeah, okay. And I mean, they're not going to be allowed to lie about it, just because they feel fine. So they're going to have to do that. The 14-day thing, I mean, that's going to F up some leagues. What if they're in the finals and LeBron gets COVID?
Yeah.
The finals are ruined.
Or even say like the guy, well, I guess they wouldn't be bunking together, but if a couple players have it on the team, if you're the opposing team, how comfortable are you going to be playing a team where you're like, well, unless you test you're going to just have to test the team. As soon as somebody tests positive, you're going to have to, I guess what you're already doing. I'm doing the math in my head in real time right now. You're already testing them, so you'll be able to say, oh, they don't have it. But still in the back of your mind, there's got to be that part where it's like, well, maybe it was a false negative or something, and like they do have it, like or false positive.
It's not going away quite like we were expecting. The warm weather's doing nothing. Look at Florida; it's doing nothing.
Yep. Texas is surging.
Texas, right? I mean, pretty much every southern warm state. And I know, there's the argument, well, they're testing more now. Okay. I mean, I don't know. It's like, well, that's good, I guess, but still not going anywhere.
No. And the other thing too is like especially with athletes, and you kind of hit it. I'm circling back with when you were like Zeke now says he's feeling better, which means he wasn't feeling good at some point, which the kind of maybe big lie we've been being told, and there's been a couple, is that if you're young, you're sort of like Supermaning this. Like, unless you have an underlying condition, you're kind of impervious to this. Like, yeah, it might feel like a bad cold or something, but like you're going to be okay. And that may not end up being the case. And the other thing, we were sort of talking pre-show about this. I've heard multiple people kind of say it where it's like, well, these guys are in the best shape of their lives. They'll be able to beat it no matter what. How many times throughout sports have we had guys who nobody knew had an underlying condition and then died. For example, the old lineman or D lineman, I apologize, I don't remember his name, at Maryland a couple years ago, who died in a conditioning drill. Like, that happens. The famous basketball player at Loyola, I'm blanking on all these people's names, but like, they had heart issues that people didn't know about ahead of time. And then they ended up dying through the exertion of the game. Well, last time I checked, or what I've heard, and I'm not a medical professional, this affects, like, it thickens your blood and has big issues on cardiovascular. Like, that could be a huge problem for players. So I think if we're going to push forward, there's an acceptance of, like, there are players that could very easily die from this.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be a lot harder than I think we're right now comprehending and getting this done.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, I just think 2 drafts ago, when the Redskins drafted Montez Sweat with like the last pick in the first round, he dropped to them because in all the pre-medical stuff, he had some sort of heart condition that no one knew about. I mean, as far as I know, he's going to play regardless, but he's got to be somewhat worried and somewhat aware. And I mean, he's an absolute freak of nature. I mean, he looks like he's fucking Julius Peppers. I mean, but he doesn't want to get it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just tons, and like you said, I mean, there's tons of players that just drop dead on the field. I mean,
that's like a real possibility.
Yeah.
If we're being honest about it. And the other problem too is, and we said this earlier when this happened, outside of the sports where you're a single athlete, golf, tennis, the UFC has been doing a good job with this. They have a team around them, but they're singular athletes. It's going to be really, really hard to do organized team sports. They are going to try their best, just like, work offices, most I would hope, are going to do their best to try to create a safe atmosphere. But and I want sports just as much as the other person does, but it is, like, I think we've kind of just assumed, like, oh, this is easy, we're going to get it, unless you're baseball, which we'll get to in a minute. Like, we're going to push forward, we're going to have it. But I do think the hurdles are actually going to be a lot larger unless you bubble boy city them than we are thinking right now. And it doesn't help that there are segments of the population that don't take this seriously in the least bit. I'm not saying be crippled by fear, but like Zeke and Dak were having parties when this thing was exploding, not practicing social distancing. Turns out he gets it. Like, there are segments of this population that don't take it seriously. They don't wear masks. They think you're, somehow weak because you wear a mask. It's like, no, just common decency. Like, I'm not fearing for myself. I'm more afraid of who I may give it to if I have it and I don't know it. Like, it's things like that there's segments of the population that aren't taking this seriously in the least bit that are going to ruin it too for everybody else, because it's already hard to control if everybody were taking it seriously.
Yeah, exactly. And like we've said before, I mean, it's not necessarily just about the players. There are older coaches, out of shape coaches. I mean, you look at Andy Reid, love him, but he's a big man. Pete Carroll's pretty old. Bill Belichick's pretty old.
Yeah.
Pete
Carroll's the guy that I always forget how old he is, because he looks fantastic for his age. But he's like almost his 80s, I think, isn't he? He's always way older.
73-ish.
Maybe that's it.
73 or 74. And then,
I used to way undershoot.
The officials are old.
Other good point right there. We've talked about that.
They're old. They're too old, but they're old.
Yeah. Pete Carroll is a guy who I always undershot the number, and now I have a habit of overshooting the number. He's 68. I way overshot at 80. Whoa. Get the fuck out of here. What was I thinking?
It was like 72, 73.
I got in the habit of so undershooting it because he doesn't look his age, but that's still old. Like, he's got a what's the – this is going to sound so bad. What's the old person card you get? AARP card. Like, he's got one of those. He qualifies for Social Security right now.
Sure does.
Like, these aren't spry chickens we're dealing with. And you hit it on the head too. Like, I got to imagine that there are a lot of coaches out there that have underlying conditions that we just don't know about, that it's not going to be great if they get this. Like, they're going to have potentially, if they don't die from this, complications. Because that's been the biggest thing I've been reading. It's like, it's not so much the death rate's high. It's like the complications you get are pretty bad.
I'm just thinking of things right now. I mean, what if your offensive play caller gets it? He's out for 2 games. Who's calling the plays?
That's a good point. Crazy. Yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be so – yeah, I'm telling you right now, too, I'm not making a bet until right before kickoff if this league's happening.
Man.
I don't need at the last minute being like, because they kept it close to the vest, that Andy Reid's out of the game or head coach, or like Tom Brady got it and isn't playing. Like, it's a, like, I don't need that last minute after I put a wager in. Yeah. Now, speaking of a league that's not getting it done.